Alexander Reed was the kind of man who commanded attention the moment he entered a room. With his tall, commanding presence, tailored suits, and an air of unshakable confidence, he was the epitome of power and success. As the CEO of a multinational conglomerate, Alexander had built an empire from the ground up, turning his family name into a symbol of wealth and influence. Yet beneath the polished exterior of his business empire and public life, Alexander's personal world was anything but simple. His marriage to Victoria, his pregnant wife, was far from the fairy tale image others perceived. What had once been a passionate union now felt like a suffocating cage, and Alexander found himself growing increasingly disillusioned and restless. Victoria was everything society expected of a billionaire's wife, poised, elegant, and devoted to their unborn child. But Alexander no longer felt the warmth he once did. Instead, he was weighed down by feelings of resentment and frustration. The constant pressure of impending fatherhood, combined with the unraveling connection between them, made him feel trapped. Their conversations had become strained and hollow, and the distance between them grew more palpable by the day. The man who had once been deeply in love with Victoria now found himself yearning for freedom and excitement, something that the predictability of his marriage could no longer provide. As these emotions churned inside him, Alexander's thoughts began to drift toward Isabella, his mistress, a woman who seemed to offer the thrill and companionship he craved. Unlike Victoria, Isabella was daring, spontaneous, and deeply attentive to his desires. She was a stark contrast to the life Alexander felt trapped in, and the idea of starting anew with her became increasingly appealing. He started to convince himself that leaving Victoria was the right choice, that it would free him from the chains of a failing marriage and allow him to pursue the happiness he deserved. The thought of abandoning his pregnant wife was difficult, but Alexander rationalized it as a necessary step toward reclaiming his own life. Yet beneath Alexander's calculated decision lay a brewing tension that neither he nor anyone else fully understood. The cracks in his seemingly perfect world were widening, and what he saw as a simple escape plan was about to spiral into a complex and dangerous web of deceit and betrayal. The calm surface of his life concealed dark undercurrents, secrets and alliances that threatened to unravel everything he had built. As Alexander prepared to walk away from Victoria and the life they shared, the foundations of his empire and heart were about to be shaken in ways he never anticipated. Victoria Reed was the kind of woman who carried herself with quiet grace and elegance. Young and beautiful, she had the kind of delicate charm that made people naturally drawn to her. Her long, dark hair framed a gentle face marked by soft features and expressive eyes that held both warmth and an undercurrent of sadness. Victoria had devoted herself wholeheartedly to her marriage and to the life she and Alexander were supposed to share, embracing the role of a supportive wife and soon-to-be mother. Yet beneath her composed exterior, she wrestled with feelings of deep loneliness. The grand mansion they lived in often felt cold and empty, echoing with the silence of a man who was physically present but emotionally absent. Her days were filled with prenatal appointments and preparations for the baby, but her nights were often spent staring at the ceiling, wondering where the man she married had gone. Pregnancy was supposed to be a joyful time for Victoria, but it brought with it a host of challenges that tested her resilience. The physical discomforts were taxing: morning sickness, fatigue, and the constant worry about the health of her unborn child. More than that, however, was the emotional toll. The growing distance between her and Alexander was like an invisible weight pressing down on her heart. She sensed that something was wrong, but no matter how hard she tried to reach out, Alexander remained distant and cold. Victoria's love for him was unwavering, but the fear of betrayal gnawed at her every thought. She couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander was slipping away, that their life together was unraveling thread by thread. Despite these fears, she fought to hold on to hope, trying to salvage what remained of their marriage with gentle words, thoughtful gestures, and patient understanding. Her quiet strength was one of her defining traits. Victoria was not the type to demand attention or cause a scene. Instead, she endured her pain with a dignity that impressed even those closest to her. She concealed her vulnerability behind a calm smile and polite conversation, masking the turmoil that churned beneath the surface. Every day was a battle between hope and despair, and she refused to give up without a fight. Friends and family admired her resilience, often unaware of the silent suffering she bore alone. Victoria was learning to navigate the complex emotions of love, disappointment, and fear, all while preparing to bring a new life into the world. Her suspicions about Alexander's behavior were growing stronger by the day, though she had no concrete proof. He was increasingly secretive, answering calls behind closed doors, leaving the house at odd hours, and avoiding eye contact when she asked direct questions. Victoria's intuition told her that Alexander was hiding something significant, and that thought alone made her heart ache. She found herself watching him closely, searching for clues in his expressions, in the small lies he told, and in the inconsistencies of his stories. But every time she confronted him, the answers were vague, dismissive, or full of denial. This left Victoria trapped in a painful limbo, unable to confront the truth fully but unable to ignore the warning signs either. Her journey was one of hope shadowed by doubt, strength challenged by vulnerability, and love tested by the fear of betrayal. Isabella Monroe was a woman who knew exactly how to get what she wanted. With her striking features, dark, glossy hair, and eyes that sparkled with a mixture of mischief and calculation, she exuded a magnetic charm that few could resist. She carried herself with a confident grace that was both alluring and intimidating, and she wielded her beauty like a weapon in a game she had been playing for years. Isabella was not just a mistress caught up in a fleeting romance, she was clever and ambitious, driven by goals far beyond the simple satisfaction of an affair. Beneath the surface of her seductive smile lay a mind always working, always scheming. To Isabella, Alexander Reed was not merely a lover, but a key to a much larger prize. Her connection to Alexander was complicated by a secret that not even he fully understood. Isabella was deeply entangled with Marcus Kane, Alexander's most dangerous enemy. This alliance was born out of mutual benefit and shared hatred. Marcus, a ruthless businessman with a vendetta against Alexander, had found in Isabella a perfect pawn to infiltrate the billionaire's personal life. In exchange for her cooperation and loyalty, Marcus promised Isabella power, wealth, and a position of influence that she had long craved. Their partnership was built on deception and mutual exploitation. Isabella used her relationship with Alexander to gather confidential information, weaken his trust in those closest to him, and manipulate his decisions for Marcus's advantage. The affair was never just about passion, it was a calculated move in a deadly game of corporate and personal warfare. Isabella's manipulation of Alexander was masterful and relentless. She knew his weaknesses, his ego, his desire for control, and his craving for excitement beyond the monotony of his marriage. Using charm and deceit, she wrapped him around her finger, whispering sweet promises of a future free from burdens and obligations. To Alexander, she appeared as the breath of fresh air he desperately needed, a dazzling escape from the suffocating confines of his life with Victoria. But behind the smiles and tender moments lay a woman skilled in the art of betrayal. She carefully orchestrated every interaction, ensuring Alexander's emotions were tangled in her web while keeping her true loyalties hidden. Isabella was a master at playing roles, switching seamlessly between the loving mistress and the ruthless conspirator. Her double life was filled with secret meetings, whispered conversations, and coded messages. While Alexander believed their time together was private and intimate, Isabella's nights were often spent with Marcus, plotting the next move to bring down the man she pretended to love. They met in shadowy locations, discreet hotels, quiet cafes, and hidden offices, places where no one could trace their connection. In these moments, Isabella shed the persona she showed Alexander and revealed her true self, a cunning operative deeply committed to her cause. She passed information, discussed strategies, and coordinated actions designed to undermine Alexander's empire and personal life. Each meeting reinforced her commitment to the alliance, even as her heart remained cold toward the man she deceived. Isabella's world was one of secrets and lies, where trust was a commodity she traded and loyalty was always conditional. Marcus Kane was a man whose name alone sent ripples of unease through the corridors of power and wealth. Tall, sharp-featured, and exuding an icy charisma, Marcus was the quintessential adversary. Unlike Alexander Reed, whose charm was warm but commanding, Marcus was cold and calculating, a master strategist who thrived on control and domination. Their rivalry stretched back over a decade, rooted not only in cutthroat business competition but also in deeply personal betrayals that had left scars neither man could forget. Marcus had built his fortune through ruthless ambition, and his singular goal had long been to dismantle everything Alexander had worked so hard to create. To Marcus, defeating Alexander was not just about winning, it was about revenge, pride, and proving who truly held the crown in their shared world. The history between Marcus and Alexander was tangled with deceit and broken trust. Years ago, the two had been business partners on a lucrative deal that promised to transform their industries. However, what began as collaboration quickly spiraled into treachery when Marcus orchestrated a hostile takeover, seizing control of key assets and leaving Alexander blindsided. The betrayal cut deep, not only because of the financial loss but because of the personal nature of their partnership. Alexander had trusted Marcus, believing him to be an ally, only to discover he had been manipulated and outmaneuvered. From that moment on, Marcus became the embodiment of everything Alexander fought against. The bitter grudge Marcus held fueled his every move, making their battles both professional and intensely personal. Over time, the rivalry expanded beyond boardrooms and courtrooms, seeping into their private lives, feeding on jealousy, anger, and the desire to inflict pain. Marcus's plan to destroy Alexander was meticulous and multi-layered, designed to exploit not just his rival's business vulnerabilities but also the cracks in his personal life. Recognizing that Alexander's greatest strength, his family, was also his Achilles heel, Marcus sought to use this to his advantage. He understood that the billionaire's marriage was strained, and his pregnant wife was a symbol of both hope and pressure that Alexander struggled to balance. By planting seeds of doubt and fueling mistrust within Alexander's closest relationships, Marcus aimed to weaken his focus and fracture his support system. This approach was ruthless, targeting Alexander's emotions as much as his assets. Marcus's goal was to dismantle Alexander's empire by attacking from within, turning his personal world upside down so that the business empire would crumble along with it. Every move Marcus made was calculated to cause maximum damage, leveraging secrets, lies, and deception to chip away at Alexander's foundation. Central to Marcus's strategy was his alliance with Isabella, Alexander's mistress. Marcus had recognized her potential early on, a woman with ambition and cunning, capable of infiltrating Alexander's personal life without arousing suspicion. Their partnership was one of convenience and shared interests. Isabella's role was to be the insider, the whisperer who could manipulate Alexander's emotions and extract confidential information that Marcus could use. In return, Marcus offered Isabella the promise of power and financial reward, elevating her beyond the typical role of a mistress to that of a strategic partner. Together, they formed a covert team aimed at sabotaging Alexander on multiple fronts. Marcus provided the resources and intelligence, while Isabella worked her subtle but devastating influence over Alexander. Through this alliance, Marcus hoped to pull the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating a downfall that would be swift, complete, and irreversible. Their collaboration was marked by secrecy and precision. Marcus operated from the shadows, leveraging his network of loyal operatives and legal experts to execute his plans without leaving a trace back to him. He was patient, knowing that timing was everything. He watched Alexander's moves carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, Isabella fed him vital information, keeping Marcus updated on Alexander's moods, vulnerabilities, and potential weaknesses. This information gave Marcus the upper hand, allowing him to anticipate Alexander's actions and counter them effectively. The enemy Alexander thought he knew was only a fraction of the threat Marcus posed. Behind every smile and business handshake lay a calculated effort to undermine and destroy. Marcus Kane was the hidden threat, an enemy who was not only willing to fight dirty but who thrived on the pain and chaos he could inflict on Alexander's life. His ultimate objective was clear, to watch Alexander fall, piece by piece, until nothing remained but ashes and regret. Alexander had always been a man who trusted his instincts, but lately, those instincts had begun to raise red flags he could no longer ignore. At first, the signs were subtle. Isabella's stories didn't quite add up, moments of hesitation or conflicting details that she quickly brushed aside with a practiced smile. There were times when she would receive mysterious phone calls, stepping away abruptly without explanation, or return from meetings with a glint in her eyes that made Alexander uneasy. The little things, which at one time might have seemed insignificant, began piling up, forming a pattern he couldn't overlook. Isabella, once the source of excitement and comfort, was slowly becoming an enigma shrouded in secrets. His once unwavering confidence in her now wavered, replaced by a gnawing doubt that he tried to push away but couldn't. One evening, Alexander noticed a contradiction in Isabella's account of where she had been. She told him she was at a charity gala, yet a discreet check by his assistant revealed no record of her attendance. Another time, a receipt for an expensive dinner appeared on her credit card statement, but she insisted she had dined alone and forgotten to mention it. These inconsistencies weren't blatant lies, but small slips that hinted at something deeper, something hidden from him. Alexander's mind raced to piece together the fragments, each question adding to his growing unease. He found himself watching Isabella more closely, scrutinizing her expressions, her tone, and her movements for signs of deception. But the more he looked, the more confused he became, trapped between his desire to believe and the mounting evidence that suggested betrayal. Meanwhile, Victoria was not idle. Though she remained composed on the surface, her suspicions about Alexander's behavior had evolved into quiet determination. She began reaching out to friends and trusted acquaintances, subtly probing for information without revealing her concerns outright. Victoria's approach was cautious. She understood that accusations without proof would only widen the gulf between her and Alexander. Instead, she gathered small pieces of evidence, overheard conversations, unexplained absences, and whispered rumors, stitching them together into a clearer picture of what might be happening. She hired a private investigator, discreetly assigning him to follow Alexander and Isabella's movements, hoping to uncover the truth that eluded her. Victoria's maternal instincts and fierce love for her unborn child fueled her resolve to protect her family, even if it meant confronting painful realities. As the days passed, the tension in Alexander's world grew thicker. His mind became a battlefield of conflicting emotions, trust battling suspicion, love clashing with anger. The man who once saw his future clearly was now clouded by doubt and confusion. Each interaction with Isabella left him questioning her motives, wondering whether the woman he thought he knew was an illusion crafted to manipulate him. At the same time, he felt guilt and shame for the way he had treated Victoria, recognizing the distance he had created between them. The cracks in his carefully constructed life were widening, and Alexander was caught in the eye of a storm he did not know how to control. The suspense built steadily, the invisible threads of deception tightening around him, pulling him deeper into a web of lies and betrayal. The turning point was approaching, a moment when truths would be unveiled, and decisions made that could change everything. As the weight of suspicion settled heavily on Victoria's heart, her quiet strength began to solidify into something fierce and unyielding. The whispers of betrayal that had once felt like distant echoes now rang loud and clear inside her, sharpening her focus and hardening her resolve. Victoria refused to be a passive victim in a story unfolding without her consent. Though the pain of potential deceit cut deeply, it also ignited within her a protective fire, a fierce determination to safeguard not only her own dignity but also the precious life growing inside her. The baby she carried was her anchor, her reason to stand tall in the face of uncertainty and heartbreak. Victoria knew that fighting back was not just about reclaiming control over her life, but about creating a safe future for her child. Her plan was deliberate and thoughtful. Victoria recognized that emotional strength alone would not be enough to navigate the treacherous path ahead. She needed facts, allies, and strategy. Quietly, without raising suspicion, she began assembling a circle of trusted individuals who could support her cause. A private investigator, loyal and discreet, was the first key piece. Victoria's choice was deliberate, someone who could uncover the truth without alerting Alexander or Isabella, someone skilled in peeling back layers of deception. She briefed him carefully, laying out what she suspected but emphasizing the need for concrete evidence. This investigator would shadow movements, monitor communications, and gather the proof Victoria needed to confront reality head-on. Alongside the investigator, Victoria leaned on her closest friends, women who had stood by her through life's trials and triumphs. These friends became her emotional pillars, offering quiet encouragement and unwavering support. They listened patiently to her fears and hopes, reminding her of her worth and strength when self-doubt crept in. Their presence was a balm during the loneliest nights, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. Victoria also reached out to a trusted family lawyer, preparing herself for any legal battles that might arise. The lawyer's role was to ensure Victoria's rights and interests, especially those of her unborn child, would be fiercely protected. This network of allies was more than just practical, it was a source of empowerment, transforming Victoria's vulnerability into a determined force. Victoria's journey was marked by moments of raw emotion and quiet courage. There were nights when tears slipped unbidden, a release of the pain and fear that weighed on her soul. But these moments never broke her spirit. Instead, they fueled her resolve to rise above the hurt and uncertainty. She practiced calm and poise in public, shielding the world from the storm raging inside her. When she confronted Alexander in brief, charged exchanges, her words were measured but firm, a reflection of the strength she was cultivating. Victoria was learning to stand her ground not through anger or bitterness but through a steadfast belief in her own dignity and worth. Her courage was quiet but profound, a testament to the power of resilience even when faced with overwhelming odds. In the depths of her heart, Victoria knew the road ahead would be difficult and fraught with pain. But she also knew that she would not let fear dictate her actions. For her child, for herself, and for the future she deserved, Victoria was ready to fight, not with desperation, but with the steady, unwavering strength of a woman determined to reclaim her life. Her story was no longer one of silent suffering, it was a story of empowerment, courage, and hope, a testament to the quiet strength that can grow in the darkest of times. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted in a series of explosive confrontations, forever altering the fragile balance that held Alexander's life together. The first major confrontation came between Alexander and Isabella, their relationship unraveling in a whirlwind of anger and accusation. What had once been whispered promises and secret meetings now turned into bitter arguments charged with raw emotion. Alexander's frustration boiled over as he demanded answers, his voice sharp and trembling with disbelief. "Why are you lying to me?" he accused, his eyes searching Isabella's face for the truth he desperately wanted to hear. Isabella, however, was equally fierce, her composure slipping as she lashed out with biting words, refusing to admit to anything beyond a casual affair. The room crackled with tension as they exchanged barbed remarks, each trying to dominate the narrative, neither willing to yield. Despite Isabella's denials, the cracks in her facade were becoming impossible to ignore. Alexander's anger was mixed with confusion and hurt. He replayed every conversation, every excuse, every vague response, searching for the moment when the illusion had begun to shatter. The emotional conflict tore at him. The man who had wanted to leave his wife for a fresh start now found himself trapped in a nightmare he hadn't anticipated. The betrayal was deeper and more complicated than he had imagined. Each confrontation with Isabella peeled back another layer of deception, revealing glimpses of a hidden agenda that Alexander had refused to see. The arguments grew more intense, their voices sometimes rising to shouts, until exhaustion forced them apart, leaving a bitter silence in their wake. Meanwhile, Victoria was preparing to face Isabella in her own way. Armed with the evidence gathered through painstaking investigation, photographs, intercepted messages, and witness testimonies, Victoria confronted Isabella with quiet but undeniable strength. The moment was charged with tension, the air thick with years of hurt and betrayal. Victoria's voice was steady as she laid out the proof of Isabella's lies and manipulation. "I know everything," she said simply, eyes locked on Isabella's, unwavering. Isabella's confident mask cracked for the first time, her bravado giving way to unease and anger. The confrontation was not just about personal grievances, it was a collision of two women fighting for their own sense of justice and truth. Victoria's calm resolve stood in stark contrast to Isabella's desperation, marking a turning point in the battle for Alexander's heart and trust. Alexander's shock was palpable when Victoria shared the evidence, confirming what he had only suspected in fragments. The betrayal hit him harder than he expected, the realization that Isabella's deceit was not just about their affair, but tied to a greater conspiracy orchestrated by his enemy. The depth of Isabella's treachery stunned him, shaking his confidence and forcing him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew. The man who had been so certain of his decisions now grappled with feelings of guilt, regret, and a growing determination to make things right. Alexander understood that the path ahead would be complicated and painful, but he also recognized the importance of facing the truth head-on. As the layers of deception unfolded, Alexander began to piece together the full scope of the conspiracy. He saw how Marcus Kane had manipulated events behind the scenes, using Isabella as a weapon to weaken him both personally and professionally. This revelation was both infuriating and clarifying. It explained the subtle but persistent sabotage he had felt in recent months, and the carefully hidden attacks that had threatened to unravel his empire. The betrayal was not merely a private matter, it was a calculated move in a deadly game of power and revenge. With this new understanding, Alexander's perspective shifted from anger toward action. The exposure of Isabella's betrayal was a devastating blow, but it also marked the beginning of his fight to reclaim control. He knew the battle ahead would be fierce, but for the first time in a long while, Alexander felt the stirrings of hope that with truth on his side, he could confront his enemy and rebuild what had been broken. Alexander stood at a crossroads, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like a storm about to break. The path before him was painfully clear yet fraught with impossible consequences. On one side lay the tempting escape, abandon Victoria and the unborn child, walk away from the tangled mess of lies, heartbreak, and betrayal, and attempt to salvage what remained of his fractured life on his own terms. On the other lay the harder route, fight for his family, for the woman he had once loved deeply, and for the legacy he had spent years building, a legacy now threatened by enemies both external and within. The decision was anything but simple. His mind churned with doubt and regret, unsure if forgiveness was even possible or if the wounds were too deep to heal. Yet beneath the turmoil, a flicker of something powerful began to grow, a desire to make things right. As Alexander wrestled with his emotions, memories flooded back unbidden, haunting and bittersweet. He recalled the early days with Victoria, when their love was new and full of promise. He remembered the laughter they shared during quiet mornings, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about their future, and the warmth of her hand in his. Those moments seemed distant now, overshadowed by suspicion and pain, but they were real and undeniable. Flashbacks of family holidays, intimate conversations, and the dream of building a life together reminded Alexander of what he risked losing. These memories were both a balm and a torment, stirring his conscience and forcing him to confront the man he once was and the man he wanted to become. The man he had threatened to abandon was not just a husband or a father, he was a protector, a provider, and above all, someone who believed in second chances. The choice crystallized when Alexander thought about Victoria's unborn child. The life growing inside her was innocent and pure, a symbol of hope amid chaos. Protecting that child became an unshakable priority, anchoring him to his family and giving him renewed purpose. The baby was more than just an extension of his legacy, it was a chance for redemption, a reason to rebuild trust and mend broken bonds. Alexander realized that true strength was not in walking away but in standing firm, in facing the consequences of his actions and fighting to create a better future for those he loved. This realization was a turning point, shifting his resolve from despair to determination. With clarity came action. Alexander began to formulate a plan, not only to repair his fractured marriage but also to dismantle the web of deceit spun by Marcus Kane and Isabella. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, requiring careful strategy and unwavering resolve. First, he vowed to sever all ties with Isabella, cutting off the toxic influence that had poisoned his life. He would confront her deception head-on, exposing the lies and manipulation that had nearly destroyed him. At the same time, Alexander committed to reclaiming control over his business empire, identifying the vulnerabilities Marcus had exploited and fortifying his defenses against further attacks. He enlisted the help of trusted advisors and legal experts, ready to wage a battle not only in the boardroom but also in the court of public opinion. Alexander's redemption was as much about personal growth as it was about external victory. He began the difficult process of rebuilding trust with Victoria, understanding that forgiveness would not come easily or quickly. He embraced vulnerability, admitting his mistakes and showing genuine remorse. Slowly, he opened his heart to the possibility of healing, ready to prove through actions rather than words that he was committed to their future together. This journey required patience, humility, and an unwavering commitment to change. In the face of betrayal and chaos, Alexander chose love over escape, family over freedom, and courage over fear. His decision to fight for Victoria and their unborn child marked the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter defined not by what had been lost but by what could still be saved. The billionaire who had once planned to leave now stood ready to protect, rebuild, and reclaim everything that truly mattered. Alexander and Victoria, united by a newfound purpose, assembled a trusted team to take down the enemy who had wreaked havoc on their lives. This team included Victoria's private investigator, Alexander's top legal counsel, and a group of loyal business advisors who understood the gravity of the situation. Together, they crafted a meticulous plan to expose Marcus Kane and Isabella Monroe for the deception and treachery they had orchestrated. Their strategy was multifaceted, aiming to dismantle the conspirators' power both publicly and behind the scenes. Every move was calculated to ensure maximum impact while minimizing risks to Alexander's reputation and their family's privacy. It was a battle fought with intelligence and precision rather than brute force, a chess game where each piece was carefully positioned for the ultimate checkmate. The first phase of the plan involved gathering irrefutable evidence that would stand up in court and sway public opinion. Victoria's private investigator delivered critical information, recorded conversations, proof of financial manipulations, and documented meetings between Isabella and Marcus. This evidence revealed not only the personal betrayal but also a broader scheme to sabotage Alexander's business empire. Armed with these facts, Alexander's legal team launched a series of lawsuits targeting Marcus's companies, exposing fraudulent activities and breaches of contract. Simultaneously, they worked with media outlets willing to report on the scandal, carefully controlling the narrative to highlight Alexander's victimization and resilience. Press conferences were held, statements issued, and exclusive interviews arranged, all designed to dismantle Marcus's carefully crafted public image. The media exposure ignited a public outcry against Marcus Kane, shaking the foundations of his business empire. Investors began withdrawing support, wary of being associated with a company mired in scandal and legal troubles. Key partners distanced themselves, and employees grew restless amid the growing uncertainty. The once untouchable titan of industry found himself isolated, facing mounting pressure from all sides. As Alexander's team continued to apply relentless legal and financial pressure, cracks appeared in Marcus's empire. His resources dwindled, and his influence waned, the very tools he had used to attack Alexander turning against him. The downfall was swift and brutal, a testament to the power of truth and perseverance. Isabella's fate was equally severe. Once the confident and manipulative mistress, she now faced the consequences of her actions. Publicly exposed as a traitor and conspirator, she was ostracized from the social circles she had once dazzled. Legal repercussions followed, including charges related to fraud and conspiracy, leading to a highly publicized trial. Isabella's attempts to defend herself fell flat against the overwhelming evidence, and her reputation was irrevocably damaged. The woman who had wielded deception as a weapon was now disarmed and defeated, a cautionary tale of ambition gone awry. The victory was hard-earned and bittersweet. Alexander and Victoria knew that while the enemy had been vanquished, the scars left behind would take time to heal. Their journey through betrayal and conspiracy had tested their limits and transformed them both. But standing together, victorious against seemingly insurmountable odds, they found a renewed sense of hope and strength. The downfall of Marcus and Isabella was not just a legal and financial triumph, it was a reclamation of their lives, their love, and their future. The satisfaction of justice served was profound, a reminder that truth and resilience could overcome even the darkest of betrayals. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, Alexander and Victoria began the delicate process of rebuilding their relationship, brick by brick, on a foundation of renewed trust and genuine love. The wounds from betrayal and heartbreak were still fresh, but both understood that healing required patience, honesty, and a commitment to move forward together. Conversations that had once been filled with silence and suspicion gradually turned into open dialogues where fears and hopes were shared without judgment. The couple learned to listen deeply, to forgive earnestly, and to support one another with a tenderness born from surviving the darkest moments. Their bond, once fractured, now held the promise of a future forged in resilience and understanding. The arrival of their child marked the most profound turning point in their journey, a symbol of hope and renewal that brought light into their lives. Holding their newborn, Alexander and Victoria felt a profound sense of responsibility and joy that transcended past pain. The baby represented a fresh start, a chance to rewrite their story and to create a family grounded in love rather than betrayal. Each small milestone, first smiles, tentative steps, gentle embraces, became a celebration of the strength they had cultivated together. The child's presence softened old wounds and inspired Alexander to grow not just as a husband, but as a devoted father willing to protect and nurture with unwavering devotion. Alexander's transformation was evident to all who knew him. He embraced his roles with humility and dedication, shedding the arrogance that had once blinded him. His priorities shifted from power and control to presence and compassion. The billionaire who had once sought escape now found fulfillment in everyday moments, reading bedtime stories, sharing quiet dinners, and building memories that would last a lifetime. This growth was not without its challenges, but Alexander's willingness to change and to face his mistakes head-on became a testament to the power of love and accountability. Victoria, too, blossomed in this new chapter, her strength shining brighter as a partner and mother, proud of the family they were rebuilding. Their story stands as a powerful reminder of resilience, forgiveness, and the transformative power of truth. Even when faced with profound betrayal, the choice to confront pain with courage can lead to healing and renewal. Alexander and Victoria's journey shows that love, when rooted in honesty and perseverance, can overcome the darkest trials. In the end, it is not the absence of hardship but the strength to rise above it that defines the true meaning of family and hope.